Would you pray with me? Now, Lord, grant that the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts might be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Have you heard about the new art gallery that opened in September here in Charlotte? It's called the Teo Outdoor Gallery, located at 2020 North Brevard Street by the light rail in Noda. It features the work of graffiti from our community. There are 12 billboard canvases for people to create art on. In this picture of the founders, we see Osiris Rain, who's on the left, and Sidney Duarte in the middle, and Treasy Trees, I'm not sure if that's his baptized name. These are the artists behind the creation of the Teo Outdoor Gallery. In the upper right-hand corner of that particular piece is the sign for Teo. Looking at the sign, I'll confess I have no idea what it meant. In fact, when I see most graffiti, I don't understand what it's saying. I'm pretty sure I'm not the target demographic. But I did a little research to discover that Teo stands for the awakening of humanity. And the symbol was developed by Treasy Trees. Looking at it, you can see the O at the top, and the A in the center, and the H at the base, and the T emanates from the radiance of the other letters. Once you have the key, you can understand the symbol. Now, according to Treasy Trees, it's a new worldwide symbol that he's promoting. And his Instagram video on how to make the symbol, it now has 758 views. So I'm pretty sure it's going viral. Our artist for today's sanctuary bulletin cover is a little more widely known than Treasy. It's Banksy. Banksy is the pseudonym adopted by an anonymous urban artist. Banksy's work has brought more money at auction than any other living artist in the world. It's been displayed at the Louvre, at MoMA, at the British Museum, but most often it appears in random parking lots near dumpsters in some of the biggest cities of the world. Banksy's also painted a number of murals on the West Bank barrier that separates Bethlehem from Jerusalem. Here's one that I've seen on that barrier wall. Here's another. In recent years, he's developed a theme of opening the wall. I guess the grass is always greener on the other side. And here's an image that he painted Christmas 2017. On the cover of the bulletin here in the sanctuary this morning is this work. This mural is painted on a wall at Clipstone Street in London, not far from the British Museum. It appeared overnight, Easter Monday of 2011. As described on Banksy Explained, it depicts one of Banksy's iconic rats underneath the writing in red that you see, and it references a quote by 20th century political activist Emma Goldman, who once said, "If voting ever changed anything, it would be illegal." Now, of course, in typical Banksy fashion, he turns that phrase, gets playful with it, because while voting is legal, graffiti is most often illegal. So Banksy may be making a statement of graffiti's power to actually change something. Indeed, murals or simply writing on the wall can be quite powerful. Our story from Daniel reveals this. The setting of the story is not an urban landscape or a darkened street next to a dumpster. On the contrary, it's King Belshazzar's feast to celebrate Babylon's defeat of Judah. Belshazzar's father, Nebuchadnezzar, conquered Judea in 597 BC. His son did not turn out to be the leader that Nebuchadnezzar was. Daniel paints Belshazzar as a very careless king. Today's story embodies that. He thought it'd be a good idea to break out the sacred vessels of Jerusalem's temple and turn them into wine goblets for his rager with 1,000 of his closest friends. He's doing what conquerors have done throughout the ages, humiliating the conquered. Such is the way of the world. But his feast is interrupted by an unknown graffiti artist who has the audacity to scrawl 4 words on the plaster walls of the king's palace, written in Hebrew, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Here's how Rembrandt imagined it looking. You can see the Hebrew in the upper right-hand corner there. It's written vertically, which shows us that Rembrandt might not have known much about Hebrew and how it's written. Like a lot of graffiti, no one in the king's court can figure out what the writing means, though they were in fact the target audience. King Belshazzar is understandably terrified. Verse 6 tells us, the king's face turned pale and his thoughts terrified him. His limbs gave way and his knees knocked together. The Hebrew is even more descriptive. It literally reads, his joints or his knots of his hips or his loins were loosened so that his knees knocked. This is the typical response of kings and emperors in the Bible. It's almost comic fear. From the Egyptian Pharaoh to Rome's Pontius Pilate, those who hold worldly power in the Bible are routinely exposed as being afraid. Too often, their hold on power is maintained by imposing fear on those around them. Anything that is built on fear is fragile indeed. The incident of the writing on the wall exposes the Babylonian king's deep fear. Belshazzar's feast represents a worldview of sorts. One way of understanding, a way centered in the power of kings, driven by a desire to get power, to be as close to the king as possible, fueled by the opulence embodied in the feast, with 1,000 people drinking wine out of vessels of silver and gold from the conquered people. And they even sprinkled a little religion on it. Did you notice as they praise their gods of silver and gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone? This is the Babylonian worldview. It represents one vision of the world. Daniel embodies a very different vision. Daniel's not interested in the accoutrements of the empire, in purple robes and gold necklaces and power rankings in the kingdom. Did you hear what he said to Belshazzar? You can have your gifts, Daniel says. Give them to somebody who cares because I don't. See, Daniel understands that he does not serve at the whims of Belshazzar and Nebuchadnezzar. In fact, he explains that they actually serve at the will of God. From Daniel's perspective, it was God who gave Judah into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, not because of his greatness, but because God was executing judgment on the Judeans, on their lack of faithfulness. And God used the Babylonians to bring that judgment. But Nebuchadnezzar got so power hungry that he lost his mind. And then he lost his power. And then he lost his life. Daniel's vision of the world does not give ultimate power to any worldly authority. Daniel's vision calls all worldly powers to live in humility. because their power is subject to the judgment of God. Daniel's vision sees Belshazzar's idolatry and hubris and arrogance exactly for what it is. Daniel's vision sees the writing on the wall of Belshazzar's feast quite clearly. And he knows exactly what it means. Mene, mene, tekel, parsin. These are monetary terms denoting coins and weights, words of the marketplace, words rooted in buying and selling and transacting. They are words about the economy, words born of Babylon's false gods. As one scholar describes, the obsessions of the empire, power and monetary gain, tribute payments and accounting, become the symbolic basis of God's judgment. Mene means count. Daniel interprets that to mean that Belshazzar's days are numbered. Tekel means weigh, as in scales to weigh out payment. Belshazzar is found to be lacking. He's coming up short. Parsin means divide, as in divvy up the booty. As Daniel explains, so will Belshazzar's kingdom be, divvied up among the Medes and the Persians. These words could be uttered to every worldly empire that has ever existed. Because ultimately, every empire's days are numbered. They will always be found lacking in the end, and in time, they will all be divided and conquered. You see, in Daniel's vision, Daniel's worldview, kings come and go. Only God endures forever. Today's text offers two stark visions of the world: Belshazzar's and Daniel's. It calls us to consider how we see the world. Who are the Belshazzars of our day? What are their feasts? Where are they unfolding? Feasts fueled by devotion to the idols of our world. What is the writing on the wall that the powers of our world cannot comprehend? Is it written in a language that we understand? Or perhaps, like graffiti, we're not the target demographic? In Belshazzar's day, the language was Hebrew, the language of the dispossessed, the poor, the exiled, who had been conquered by the Babylonians. Who lives in exile today? What language do they speak? What would it mean for us to learn that language? These are some of the questions this story calls us as people of faith to consider. In considering how we might answer them, we come to understand the way we see things, our own worldview, that is, our vision. Is that vision closer to Belshazzar's or God's? Should we find ourselves seated at Belshazzar's feast, Daniel calls us to excuse ourselves from that table and follow the one true God. Because empires and kings come and go. God's steadfast love endures forever. Amen.